We're going to dive right in because we've got a congressman here at the top of the show. We don't want to keep him hanging. He's been on bold before, so we're glad to have him back. Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who represents New York's 13th District. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. And we know that your schedule is tight, so let's get right back into it.
So, Congressman, I know that you're the first formerly undocumented immigrant in Congress, the first Dominican-American person in Congress. Immigration is obviously really important to you. Can you give us an update to what you're working on right now?
Well, you may know recently a court ruled to suspend the abolishment of the TPS, the Temporary Protected Status, that provides protections for immigrants coming from the Sudan, from Haiti, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. And so that was a great decision. We're waiting for another decision from the Massachusetts federal court with regards to people from Honduras. So right now we're just informing people that are beneficiaries of TPS that they're not going to be at risk of being deported, and that in fact next year many of them have to renew their TPS status. So that's what we're working on right now, in addition to the family reunification efforts that we've conducted from my office and other offices of other congressional members.
So, Congressman, I know that many of your colleagues have said that they want to abolish ICE. We had a congressman, one of your colleagues, Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi. He said he's not ready to call for the abolishment of ICE until you would tell him what you're going to replace it with. Are you pro-abolishing ICE? And if so, what would be the replacement?
Well, there are other agencies, federal agencies, that are already very specific and exclusively direct their efforts to one particular area. For example, you have ATF, you have a bunch of federal agencies that are very much laser focused in one area. And what we feel is that ICE has taken a dramatic U-turn and shifted away from its original purpose. Its original purpose was to fight drug dealers and gang leaders and criminals that cross the border. And in fact, a good percentage, over 60% of its budget, is now spent in ripping 8-month-old children from their mother's arms. So they're now.
I think the president would say that what he's doing at the border is preventing human trafficking, child trafficking, and he's doing exactly what you said, which is the purpose of ICE.
Well, that's not what I've seen. I've met with over a dozen mothers that have traveled all the way from the West Coast as far as 3,000 miles to reunite with their children that have been stripped away from them. In fact, many of the unaccompanied minors that are in households here in New York and across the United States are now being sent back to Texas, to Tornillo, Texas, to a tent camp. And so this is humiliating for America before the rest of the world. And for ICE to be engaged in ripping children away from their families as opposed to combating crime at the border.
Congressman, sorry to interrupt you. Congressman, there was a story this week that said a lot of the children that had been separated from their families are now being put up for adoption. I'm wondering if you saw that, if you're working to fight that.
Well, we're looking to reunite them as much as possible. Some of the children were sent back to the country of origin because their families, their mothers, were sent back to their country of origin. So for us to reunite with them, we have to send them back to Honduras or El Salvador. There are others whose parents are still here, and we're doing everything we can to reunite them with their family members. I think that they deserve to have that opportunity, and to just aggressively put them in foster care, it's the wrong approach. We must reunite these families. That is being consistent with American values and family values, which is something that we all as Americans really respect.
Congressman, so President Trump certainly won. One of his signature issues was the issue of immigration, and he would specifically say that there is an important distinction to be made between legal versus illegal immigration. He is married to an immigrant who came here legally, and to say that what's happening at the border, also people who are overstaying their visas, this is a problem of illegal immigration, and it's a question of sovereignty. So doesn't the United States have the duty to really protect the sovereignty?
Well, many of the people that are being incarcerated or whose children are being stripped away from are folks that are seeking asylum in our nation. And our nation has a long tradition of harboring and welcoming people that seek asylum because of either violence in their country or a natural disaster in their country of origin. That's been the tradition of our nation. And then we have a process through which, in the courts, we determine whether or not they should stay in the United States of America. So we cannot circumvent that process, and that's why the courts, in many cases, have stepped in and say, "Wait a minute, we're an independent branch of government, and we feel that the administration has overstepped their privileges. They have really overstepped their jurisdiction, and that is what has happened with regards to the Muslim ban. That happened with the separation of children, and just recently, this week, it also happened with regards to TPS.
Congressman, I want to turn to another topic that you're working on, which is housing. And you've got a bill. For our viewers who don't know, talk about what is a pass-through lease and what are you looking to do with this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you right.
I said, I want to switch topics to the topic of housing. So housing here, in affordable housing questions. And you're working on a bill. Tell our viewers, if they don't know, what is a pass-through lease and what are you looking to do with this?
Well, there are several leases that are problematic. One of them is leases for preferential rent. That means that a person is in an apartment, but they're not paying the market rate rent, and the landlord offers them a preferential rent lease that will only give them, in many cases, 1 year or 2 year stay in that apartment. And once the lease is up, if the landlord is able to get the market rate for that apartment, they're out and they have no protection whatsoever. And that's so they pass through and they have no protection whatsoever. Now, there are 12,000 of those apartments just in the northern Manhattan section of my district. And
how long would that transition period be? I'm asking because Ronald Reagan famously said that the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. So if the intention is to help people temporarily, what's the cap and how do you ensure that this is something that's not abused, that it is indeed a temporary help?
No, this is not about temporary. This is a program. Rent stabilization is triggered by a vacancy rate that allows people to find an apartment without aggressive speculation from the real estate industry. So if the vacancy rate in New York City is 2%, that means that you're not going to have many apartments available. And therefore, when you do find an apartment, the landlord can speculate up your rent. So that's what triggers rent stabilization, and that's the law of the state of New York. And it's also the law of other jurisdictions across the country. And it's a good thing. It provides certain protections so tenants are not protected. I don't think this is a handout. I don't think this is a government program that's sort of like an entitlement without any real.
Congressman, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're going to have to.
And it helps New York City continue to have working class people in many of its neighborhoods.
Absolutely. Congressman, we're going to have to wrap soon, but quickly, a future colleague of yours, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has said that housing is a human right, and I'm wondering if you agree with that stance.
I 100%.
Do you think that will poll well nationally, though? I mean, the generic ballot is very much tightening. I understand that you're in a very progressive district, but when you see what's happening nationally, aren't you concerned that message, the gap is definitely tightening heading into Election Day?
I think that a message that everybody should have a roof over their head is one that will resonate across the country. Whether you are in Florida and you just got hit by a hurricane, or whether you are in New York City or in Chicago or Los Angeles and you need affordable housing.
So, Congressman, I want to ask you real quick about Eric Holder and his comments that he made this week that when they go low, we kick them. And my question to you is, do you agree with that statement? What do you think he was trying to channel? What can the Democratic Party do? Because when I hear that as a conservative, that concerns me. That I'd rather see the Democratic Party, if they were going to truly believe in diversity and inclusion, to not use that language.
Well, I represent Harlem, East Harlem, immigrant Northern Manhattan and the Northwest Bronx. And in my neighborhood, if you get punched in the eye, you throw another punch.
So you agree with Eric Holder?
Yes, I pretty much agree with it.
Can I just clarify? Eric Holder did tweet, I think last night, that he did not literally mean he wanted to kick anyone. He just meant he wanted to verbally kick them.
But certainly, if you punch me in the eye, I will throw another punch.
But he was not advocating for violence, actual violence.
So I also want to ask you, since we still have you, about Kanye, because you have a lot of people in your district who follow him, his White House meeting. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing from constituents as well?
I will just put it in one word: bizarre.
Definitely historic. Yes. And I was a fan.
Bizarre.
I thought it was amazing.
But it was bizarre.
Okay, but what of the fact that African American support for Republicans and President Trump is rising?
Is it rising? I don't see it in Harlem. In fact, I see it totally the opposite. And in fact, people across this district continue to think that his behavior at the White House was bizarre.
Well, we'll see what happens at the polls.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Congressman. Take care.